Well, we have two very different situations to talk about here in today's offseason preview video. As we saw a team miss the playoffs for yet another season in Detroit, while the Rangers go from making the Eastern Conference Final last year to being eliminated from the playoff contention before the playoff season started this year. We'll get to all the updates and how the Rangers and Red Wings look entering the offseason coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to without you guys. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, so if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below discussing all that was discussed in today's video. So in today's video, we've got another off-season preview video. As we talked about, we're looking at the Rangers, who went from Eastern Conference finalists to missing the playoffs, and the Red Wings, who missed the playoffs yet again. It's what, the 7th or 8th straight year now for the Red Wings. So Red Wings not made the playoffs for quite a bit of time. So as usual, these off-season preview videos, we'll look at the team stats from this past year, look at their records, their point and goal scoring leaders, and some of their other stats that they did throughout the season. And we'll also look at 3 reasons I think these two teams missed the playoffs this year. We'll look at the UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for these two teams entering the offseason. And I'll give you guys 5 ways I think these two teams can improve to get better and make it back to the playoffs next year. So we're going to start today's video with the New York Rangers. Like we talked about, they were the 13th team eliminated from playoff contention. So the Rangers, they had a decent start to the season, but they really fell off towards the middle half of the year, and they stayed around the playoff mark a little bit, but they wound up being eliminated. So interesting stuff there. They finished the year with a record of 39, 36, and 7. So they were above 500, so it was good to see that, but it's just not enough to get them into the playoffs. I think they were like 6 or 7 points out at the end of the season. So very interesting stuff there. They almost were a 40-win team, but they do wind up missing the playoffs by a couple of points. So very interesting out there. I think it was by 6. So interesting stuff there. If you look at their point and goal scoring leaders, if you look at their point scoring leaders, Othmann and Perreault, no surprise there, led the team in points with 89 points. So a really solid season there from Perreault. Omika Zibanejad was second on the team with 62, and Adam Fox was third on the team with 61. So very interesting stuff there, as Perreault almost hit 90 points, so very good stuff there, but you still didn't have an overabundance of players hit over 60, 70 points. I mean, you only had 3 players hit 60 plus. So interesting note there, but there were 3 guys who hit 60 plus points. And then goal scoring wise, you had Othmann and Perreault, not surprising again, lead the team with 37 goals. Vincent Trocheck had 26 goals, and Chris Kreider had 22 goals. So for a team that was over the past couple of years having multiple 30, potentially even 40 goal scorers, not even having a player hit the 40 goal plateau and only having one guy in Perreault hit the 30 goal plateau, it's not a recipe for success. So very interesting stuff there. But the Rangers, their offense wasn't as bad as some of these teams we've recently discussed, like the Canucks or the Islanders, but it's not the greatest either. So interesting note there. Now if you look at some of their other stats, goal scoring wise, this team scored 255 goals during the season. That was good enough for 12th in the NHL. So very interesting stuff there. They were in the top half of the NHL goal scoring wise. Goals against wise, they were 19th with 255 goals against. So same amount of goals scored, but they were a little bit lower in the goals against department, so still below average. Not as worse as some of these other teams we've seen, but they were a below average team with goals against wise. Power play percentage wise, they had a 17.6% power play, which was 28th in the NHL, one of the dead last power plays in the NHL. So their power play was not an overly good unit this year, and their PK was actually quite good. They had an 80.3% PK, which was 11th in the NHL. So almost a top 10 penalty kill unit, which isn't overly bad, but the power play was absolutely non-existent for the Rangers. So all in all, they had a decent goal scoring team. They had a below average goals against team. They had a terrible power play, but a better penalty kill than a lot of people probably thought. So interesting note there. They currently have about $9.7 million in available cap space for this upcoming season. So with the little amount of cap space they have, they're probably going to have to make some movement. If you look at the 3 main reasons, in my opinion, I think they wound up missing the playoffs this year. The first one was due to the Jacob Trouba situation. There was a lot of speculation that Trouba was going to be moved last year in the offseason. It sounded like he even nixed a trade to potentially the Detroit Red Wings. That didn't happen. happened. So he started the season with New York Rangers. It started to become a very big factor off the ice. It sort of distracted the team. Trouba would eventually get traded in season to Anaheim, but I don't think they were able to recover from that sour start. So Trouba's situation, in my opinion, was one main reason this team missed the playoffs. The two was the bad power play. Like, this power play was not overly good this year. They were 28th in the NHL. You probably want to be somewhere around the average mark if you want to make the playoffs. This team was 28th. That is awful for the Rangers. So the bad power play was another reason, in my opinion, this team missed the playoffs. And the third one was not enough production from the team's top six. Like, their bottom six was all right. They got some production, which is what you want to see them. But Lafreniere took a step back this year. Zibanejad took a step back this year. Kreider, who's been scoring 30, 40, 50 goals over the past couple of years, only hit 22 this year. He took a step back. You had JT Miller, who did all right after being acquired, but he didn't do overly great. Kakko Chytil was traded in season. So the top six of this team took a major step back points production wise, and was another major reason as to why this team missed the playoffs. So in my opinion, the Trouba situation, non-existent power play, and not enough production from the top six were three main reasons, in my opinion, why this team missed the playoffs. So those are stats, those are reasons I think they missed. Going over to their significant pending UFAs, RFAs, and their draft capital for this upcoming season. So if you look at their UFAs, there's not a long list here, not overly significant players. You have Nicolas Abieu-Kubel, Leschyshyn, Giroux, Dahan, Harper, and Domingue. Domingue has been a decent third stringer for that team. I could see him potentially be brought back on like a third stringer type contract, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Harper, Giroux, Leschyshyn all didn't play at the NHL level this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they were maybe brought back on like low end short term deals, but I wouldn't be overly surprised if they walked. You have Calvin Dahan, who had 8 assists in 47 games with the Rangers and Avalanche combined. Wouldn't be surprised if he was left. And you have Nicolas Abieu-Kubel, who had a goal and 2 points in 22 games with the Sabres and the Rangers combined. Wouldn't be surprised if he left either. So you have a couple of decent depth guys like Dahan and Kubel, but I highly doubt those guys wind up staying with the Rangers. Then you have some significant pending RFAs for this team. You have Arthur Kaliev, Adam Edstrom, Juuso Parssinen, Cooley, Rempe, Brisson, Edmonds, Miller, Robertson, Jones, and Garand. Garand's been a decent prospect for the Rangers. Could probably see him be brought back. Zach Jones has a goal and 11 points in 46 games. Wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't qualified. Wouldn't be surprised if he was brought back on a 1 to 2 year deal. Also wouldn't be surprised if he was traded. So I think they have a lot of options there with Zach Jones. You also have Matthew Robertson, who had no games in NHL action this year, but is a decent prospect. So I could see him be brought back. You have Keandre Miller, who had 7 goals and 27 points in 74 games. Definitely think the Rangers will try and sign him, but also could see him be traded, so we'll have to wait and see on that. You have Lucas Edmonds, who didn't play at all the NHL level this year, and Brendan Brisson, who had 9 games at the NHL level with Vegas before he was acquired by the Rangers. I could definitely see both these guys wind up being brought back by the Rangers. You have Matt Rempe, who had 3 goals and 8 points in 42 games. Juuso Parssinen, 6 goals and 16 points in 48 games. And Adam Edstrom, 5 goals, 9 points in 51 games. All three are really decent bomb 6 forwards, so I could see all these guys will be brought back. You have Arthur Kaliev with 3 goals and 4 points in 14 games. Decent middle 6 guy. Wouldn't be surprised if he was let go. Wouldn't be surprised if he was brought back. And then you also have Will Cooley, who had 20 goals and 45 points in 82 games. He's definitely going to be brought back by Rangers. I wouldn't even be surprised if it was on a longer term deal. So some interesting RFAs headlined by Miller and Cooley, but a lot of other interesting lower end players in the RFA market too. So interesting note there. Next, going over to the team's draft capital for its upcoming offseason. Now, for them, they do not have a first round pick. Now it's up for debate at this point. They have the 12th overall pick. It's top 13 protected that they gave to Pittsburgh. So they have the option of either keeping that 12th overall pick or moving it to Pittsburgh. Or if they do keep it, then they're going to give the Penguins their unprotected first rounder next year. So it's up to them. But they currently have 8 selections in this upcoming draft, which is quite good. Like we said, at this point in time, no first round pick. They would have 9 if they do keep the first round picks. So that's interesting. They have their own second round pick, the Kraken third round pick, the Ducks and Canucks fourth round pick, their own 5th round pick, the Kraken 6th round pick, as well as their own 7th round pick. So they have their own second, 5th, 6th, and 7th round pick. They have the Kraken 6th and 3rd round pick. They have the Ducks 4th, the Canucks 4th, and they have either their own 1st round pick or no 1st round pick. So interesting note there. They'll have either 8 or 9 draft picks at this current point in time for a upcoming draft, and it could easily change. But they do have a slight bit more than the average team would. So very good stuff there for the New York Rangers, as they do have 8 or 9 draft selections for this upcoming draft. And lastly, going over to 5 things I think this New York Rangers team should do this offseason to get better for next year. Now, the top priority, in my opinion, for the Rangers entering this offseason has to be moving Chris Kreider. The relationship between Kreider and the Rangers has soured. Kreider was mentioned in trade talks all throughout the season. He didn't get traded in season, but I think there's a very likely chance, according to a couple of recent reports as well, that Kreider will get moved at some point in the offseason. He's a former 40-goal scorer, 50-goal scorer. He knows what it takes to win in the playoffs, so they're going to be a long line of teams that could potentially try and acquire Kreider and maybe try and build him back up to that 40, 50-goal scorer he once was. So it's going to be an interesting thing there. I think the Rangers will get a really solid haul for him, but I think top priority for the Rangers has to be moving on from Chris Kreider. Second priority has to be adding a top 4 defenseman. Now, they moved Jacob Chiarot this offseason, and I think they could definitely benefit from trying to add someone in the top 4 again. Now, they have Will Borgen, they have Braden Schneider, they have Fox, they have Miller. They have some decent pieces here, but they don't have a whole really great top 4 at this point. So I think if they could add one more, maybe bump a guy like a Schneider or a Borgen down to the 3rd pair would be a smart move there for the Rangers. So I don't know who they could try and target. Maybe a guy like Aaron Ekblad free agency, maybe a guy like Mackenzie Weegar in the trade market. Like, I'm not exactly sure, but adding a top 4 defenseman has to be a top priority here for the New York Rangers. The third priority is let Brennan Othmann and Jacob Perreault play in the top 9 this year. Both Othmann and Perreault, I think, are on the cusp of making the NHL, and I think should be NHL ready next year. Othmann is a very solid prospect, as well as Gabe Perreault. Perreault just came over from the NCAA. Othmann has been playing over in the AHL this past year, so I think both those guys should be getting top 9 minutes next year, so interesting note there. The fourth priority, in my opinion, for this offseason has to be adding a top 6 winger. If they're moving Kreider especially, but even after moving guys like Chytil and Kakko, they need some more top 6 help. They acquired JT Miller in season, which was a solid move by the New York Rangers, but they need more help. They need some more players to potentially play, maybe someone who can play top 6 right wing minutes. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to target some of the top free agents in this year's free agent crop, like a Ehlers, Besser, Marner, players who can play right wing and could be solid stars at the top end of that team. Also, wouldn't be surprised if they try to go after some trade candidates like a Drake Batherson from Ottawa, like a Blake Coleman from Calgary, like a Chiarot from Anaheim. Like, there's options out there for the Rangers. So interesting note there, but I definitely think that another top priority for the Rangers has to be adding a top 6 winger. And the last thing for the New York Rangers, in my opinion, has to be either move or sign K'Andre Miller. K'Andre Miller is one of their top RFAs. They have to make a decision. Do they want to keep him long term? And if so, sign him to a long-term extension before the free agent period comes so that this doesn't get dragged out for too long. But if they don't feel like Miller's going to be a long-term solution, then trade him some point earlier in the offseason. Like, this is something that has to be dealt with. Like, if they do move up K'Andre Miller, that adding top 4 defenseman priority goes up a little bit. If they do keep it, maybe goes down a little bit, but I definitely think they have to figure out what to do with K'Andre Miller. If they want to sign him to a long-term deal and keep him in their organization for the foreseeable future, or if they don't feel like he's a long-term fit, move on from him. So definitely, I think those are the 5 priorities that the Rangers have to do this offseason. I think moving Kreider, adding a top 4 defenseman, letting Othmann and Perreault play in the top 9, adding a top 6 winger, and moving or signing K'Andre Miller are 5 ways I think this Rangers could improve to maybe get back to the playoffs next year. So in my opinion, those are all the stats, the UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for the Rangers, and the 5 ways you can see this team improving. Next, going over to the Detroit Red Wings. Now, over to the Detroit Red Wings, they also had a not awful season. They were also above 500, finished the year with a record of 39, 35, and 8. So very good stuff there for the Detroit Red Wings. They were a really solid team this year. They finished the year, like we said, with a record of 39, 35, and 8. They only finished, I think, 5 points off a playoff spot. They were one of the last teams to be eliminated. So just like the year prior when they were so close to making it and just missed out, they once again just missed out. Almost hit 40 wins this year. It was just not enough to get them finally over the hump into the playoffs. So even though they had a solid season, it was just not enough for the Detroit Red Wings to get back into the playoffs. So that is why they wound up missing it. If you look at their point and goal scoring leaders, if you look at their point scoring leaders, Lucas Raymond led the team with 80 points. Really good breakout season for him, nearly a point per game. So Raymond had a solid season. And then Dylan Larkin and Alex DeBrincat both had 70 points. So they definitely had a couple of 70-point plus players, which is really good stuff there for the Detroit Red Wings. That's really good to see. Goal scoring wise, wasn't even one of the worst teams we talked about. Alex DeBrincat led the team with 39 goals, so he was almost another 40 goal scorer. Larkin had 30 goals, Raymond had 27. So those are obviously the 3-point drivers on the forward group there for the Detroit Red Wings. And they got a couple of 30 goal scorers. They had a couple of 70-plus point players. So all in all, it could be better for the Detroit Red Wings when you have their top-end talent, but it wasn't one of the worst ones we've seen so far. So interesting note there. If you look at their goal scoring, goals against, power play, penalty kill, if you look at their goal scoring, they scored 235 goals for this year. That was 22nd in the NHL. So goal scoring wise, team was not overly good and was definitely one of the worst teams in the NHL. Goals against wise, they had 259 goals against, which was 21st in the NHL. So once again, one of the worst teams goals against wise. They're in the bottom half of the league. Maybe not one of the worst, but they were in the bottom half of the league in both the goals against and goals for departments. Power play wise, one of the best NHL teams in the power play percentage, as they had a 27% power play, which was 4th in the NHL. So their power play was rocking, especially after their in-season coaching change. Penalty kill wise was crappy. They finished with a 70.1% PK, which was 32nd in the NHL, which is absolutely embarrassing. The penalty kill was atrocious this year for the Detroit Red Wings. So as you can see, goals for, goals against, both in the bottom half of the league. Power play was great, but penalty kill was atrocious. They currently have $21.3 million in cap space for this upcoming season. If you look at the 3 reasons I think they missed this year, the first reason has to be bad goaltending. This team, well, the goals against wasn't atrocious. The goaltending was awful. Both Lyon, Husso, who was eventually traded at the trade deadline, and Talbot all didn't do overly good. They acquired Mrazek in season. He did all right, but not overly great either. So the goaltending was not where it needs to be. I still think this team is in need of a goaltending move. So interesting note there, but the bad goaltending was the first reason I think this team missed the playoffs. Second one was bad penalty kills. We talked about dead last in the NHL in the penalty kill slot. That is not overly good. It's not going to get you to the playoffs if your penalty kill is dead last in the NHL. So that was another major reason I think they missed the playoffs. And the third one was not enough depth scoring. This team, like we talked about, that top end talent, DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond, all those guys had solid seasons, but the bottom 6 did not contribute enough for this Detroit Red Wings team. It was one of the reasons why they were bottom end in the goal scoring department, and another reason that's why this team missed the playoffs. So in my opinion, the 3 reasons this team missed the playoffs was bad goaltending, a bad PK, and not enough depth scoring from this team. So those are the 3 reasons I think they missed. Their stats, their cap it for this upcoming season. Next, going over to their pending UFAs, RFAs, and their draft capital. So if you look at their UFAs, not a whole bunch of elite level guys, but there are a couple. You have Patrick Kane, Craig Smith, Tyler Mott, Snively, Petrie, Lagesson, Lyon, and Campbell. Campbell was brought in to be a 4th stringer. He went into the Players Assistance Program at some point this year, so I highly doubt he'll be brought back by Detroit. Lyon had a 14-9-1 record with a 2.81 GAA and 896 save percentage for the Detroit Red Wings. Did all right as a serviceable backup. I don't think he's going to be brought back, especially with the Red Wings still having Talbot and Mrazek under contract, and me personally still feeling they'll go after a goaltender, so I highly doubt he'll be brought back. You have Will Lagesson, who had assists in 7 games, probably will wind up leaving as UFA. You have Jeff Petrie, who had a goal and 8 points in 44 games. I could definitely see him potentially be back on like a 1-year cheap deal, but also wouldn't be surprised if he was moved off. You have Snively, who didn't play in the NHL this year, could see him be brought back, could see him leave. You have Mott, who had 4 goals and 9 points in 55 games. Craig Smith, who had 9 goals and 18 points in 59 games with the Hawks and the Red Wings. Both are decent bottom 6 forwards. Could see him be brought back on 1 to 2 year cheap deals. Wouldn't be surprised if they left. And then you have Patrick Kane, who had 21 goals and 59 points in 72 games this year. Kane was a force to be reckoned with. Now, I think there's a possibility the Canes can bring him back on like a 1 to 2 year deal and keep him in the fold. But if he does hit free agent market, there'll be a ton of teams interested. So Kane's definitely the headliner in the UFA side for the Red Wings. If you look at their RFA side, you have Jonathan Berggren, Elmer Soderblom, Albert Johansson, and Emil Viro. Viro didn't have any games of NHL action, but is a top prospect, so I definitely think he'll be brought back. Johansson had 3 goals, 9 points in 61 games of NHL action, his first career NHL action, so I definitely think he'll be brought back. You have Soderblom, who had 4 goals and 11 points in 26 games, and Berggren, who had 12 goals and 24 points in 75 games for the Detroit Red Wings. So very interesting stuff there for the Red Wings. I think all 4 of those guys will probably be brought back, so interesting note there. Going over to the draft capital the Detroit Red Wings have for its upcoming offseason, and just like the Detroit Red Wings, they actually have more than the average team, as this team currently has 9 draft selections for its upcoming season. They have their own first, their own second, their own third, as well as the Rangers' third, the Bolts' fourth, their own fifth, their own sixth, and then their own seventh, as well as the Blues' seventh. So they have all their own picks except for their 4th rounder, and then they have the Rangers' third, the Bolts' fourth, and the Blues' seventh. So they have a pick in every round of the draft and an extra 3rd and 7th round pick. So it's not an overabundance of like high level draft picks that they have this year, but they have a decent amount, especially for a team who missed the playoffs, and having a couple of extra draft selections to potentially move off or use to select some younger players is a smart move there for Detroit. So 9 picks is not overly bad, and that's how much Detroit is entering at this point in time into the offseason with. So interesting note there. And lastly, going over to 5 things I think this Red Wings team should look at this offseason to improve and get better for next year. One has to be adding a top 4 defenseman, high on the younger side. This team's defense is not overly good. The best defenseman on this team by far is Moritz Seider. After that, you have a couple decent guys like Evanston starting to come into his own, but you also have Chiarot, Hull, Petrie, like you have a lot of older guys on that team. So adding a younger top 4 defenseman, whether that be in free agency with the guy who's on the younger side of the free agent market, or whether that be trading for an established younger NHL defenseman, I don't know exactly which way they'll go, but I definitely think adding a top 4 defenseman has to be a priority for the Red Wings team to improve this blue line to get better for next year. Second one has to be moving one of Mrazek or Talbot and adding a new starter. Like I said, Lyon's going to be a UFA, a highly doubt he's brought back. This team needs an overhaul in the goaltending situation. Talbot was not overly good this year. Mrazek came over, he was all right, but not great. These 2 guys, in my opinion, are more 1B backup type goaltenders, not starters. And I think if they ran with a Mrazek-Talbot tandem next year, they would be in the same position they were this year. So I think moving one of Mrazek or Talbot's and going after a clear-cut starter, whether that be in free agency with guys like Allen or Anderson, who I think would be better, or whether that be in the trade market with Gibson, Demko, or Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I'm not exactly sure which route they'll go, but I think they have to move one of Mrazek or Talbot and go after a solid starting level goaltender. Third thing I think they should do is add top 6 goal scorer. Like we talked about, they had some decent goal scorers, but I think they could benefit from adding another top end talent guy. I think they could try and potentially benefit from adding like a true second line center behind Dylan Larkin or someone in the top 9. So I think going after a top 6 goal scorer, someone who can put you up maybe 25 to 30 goals and 55 to 60 points, I think will be a smart move there for Detroit. Third thing has to be buyout or trade one of Chiarot, Hull, Copp, or Tarasenko. At this point in time, those contracts are not looking overly good. Copp's was a drastic overpayment for way too long. Tarasenko's only entering the final year of his deal, but it did not work out last year. Chiarot and Hull, I think either will have 1 or 2 years left on their contracts and are both way overpaid defensemen. So I think at this point in time, buying out or trading a couple of them will make sense. I think Chiarot, Hull, and Tarasenko buyouts will be a lot easier than Copp's buyout, but it only makes sense if it saves the money. So I don't know exactly which route they'll go, but I think moving off from 2 or 3 of these guys will make some sense for the Detroit Red Wings and will also save them some cap space. And the 5th thing I think this team needs to do is add some bottom 6 forward help. This team did not have an overly great bottom 6, so whether that be going out getting a guy like Bouvillier, Brazeau, Kopke, or Frederick in the free agent market, I think adding 1 or 2 bottom 6 forwards to sort of help goal scoring in the bottom 6 would be a smart move there for the Red Wings. So in my opinion, adding a young top 4D, moving Mrazek or Talbot and adding a solid starter, adding a top 6 goal scorer, buying out or trading Chiarot, hold Copp or Tarasenko, and adding some bottom 6 help would be some smart moves for the Red Wings in this offseason, try and finally make the playoffs next year. So that's all I'm going to talk for today about the Red Wings and the Rangers. Are you guys surprised that the Rangers and Red Wings both missed the playoffs? Are you surprised that the Rangers did after going to the Eastern Conference Final and the Red Wings did again this year? And let your guys' thoughts on if you think and agree with me that these are moves that the Rangers and Red Wings should consider to try and make it back to the playoffs next year. So that's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're liking, subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never do this without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Really just upload a channel, and don't forget to leave a comment. Also a blog to news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. Can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.